Hi everyone. Today we are going to start our new unit on stress and health. So we are going to cover today stress and the effects of it, and then next class you can expect to talk about wellness and basic healthy living. Okay, so the effects of stress. So let's start with what is stress. We know it's that process where we perceive and respond to events that we will call stressors that we understand to either be threatening or challenging. Okay. The study of stress does fall under psychology. It's actually a subsection. It's called health psychology, and it really focuses on how your stress affects your well-being and your health. So I have a couple questions up on the slide that are usually the main focus of studying in health psychology. How are stress and illness related? How do our perceptions of stress affect our health? Can we control our reactions to stress? What behaviors and attitudes help prevent health problems? So we'll talk about all of those. And by the end, you'll be able to hopefully have some ways to deal with stressors. All right, so responding to stress. To start with, when we have an event that we find stressful, you view it in one of two ways. You see it as a threat or you see it as a challenge. And it doesn't have to be you cognitively thinking about this. If you follow the Cannon-Bard theory, which is part of this, your emotional understanding and your physical understanding can happen at the same time. So if your body processes very quickly that what is happening is actually a threat to you, you'll physically respond with panic, and oftentimes you'll freeze up. So you go to take the test, and all of a sudden you feel like you're going to fail, and then you just don't answer anything. The other form is if you recognize it as a challenge, and in which case you usually become more aware, your attention is more focused, and frankly you're more likely to overcome the stress because you're going to be able to act on it. And it's all about how you view different events as they come at you. Walter Cannon from the Cannon-Bard theory did a lot of his research on this, and the big factor he focused on was the fight or flight response. And that's when you are met with extreme stress, your body will physically react to allow you to either fight the threat or run away from the threat. That's the flight part. You will see an increase in heart rate. It can dull your pain sensors, and they will also send more blood to larger muscles to prepare you to fight or flee. This has been widely recognized throughout psychology and biology as just an inherent factor. And when it is paired with stress, you can see the biological effects that stress can have. Now, Hans Selye came up based on that with the theory of a general adaptation syndrome. The idea that whatever the stress is, your body reacts in the same way in three separate phases. So the stress factor comes in and your body reacts with alarm, and then resistance, and then exhaustion. So alarm is that the fight or flight response, the aware, it's coming at you. And then there is the resistance part of it. So as the stress hormones are released, your body will work to not allow it to take over everything. So you can have that moment of freezing up, and then you get knocked back into action. However, as time goes on, if the stress remains, that resistance cannot withstand, and you will see exhaustion as the third phase. We know that any type of prolonged stress, so people who are in abusive situations or they are in combat situations and they consistently have stress, we know it has very negative side effects. Research has shown that it causes shrinking of the hippocampus, leading to poor memory retention. and definitely lower immune systems, more likely to become sick. It's a basic understanding, but it gives us a very clear reason why stress needs to be dealt with. When you look at general adaptation syndrome, the bottom line is our bodies can handle stress temporarily, but prolonged stress does cause physical deterioration. Okay. So let's talk about some of those events, those stressful events. It's been argued there are 3 types of stressful events. There is daily stress. So daily stress is literally the stuff you deal with on a daily basis. Okay, so you wake up and you realize that you've run out of pancake mix, and then you are gonna go to the store, but you can't find your keys, and then you go to school and you realize you have a test that day, and then when you come home, you were gonna make dinner, but you forgot to get the milk. Like the daily stress, things that are enough to be like, oh, this is really annoying, but on their own are not big things. However, as they build up, if you are continually stressed in that sense, you can cause mental exhaustion. You've heard the phrase burnout, which burnout will lead to very negative side effects. Physically, you can have depression. You'll see decreased productivity in terms of how well you're able to perform on whatever job or task you have. And also cynicism. People tend to become more negative, and later in the lecture, you'll see how that can be detrimental to yourself as well as other people. So daily stress is one type of stress. It is a major type of stress. And if you are in a situation where that consistently causes you stress, it's going to negatively affect you. Other types of stressful events, there's significant life change. So when you move out for the first time, or there's a death in the family, or you get divorced, or you get fired, big events can lead to higher levels of stress. However, they're not maintained. Eventually, you are able to deal with these situations. Okay? And then the last event is catastrophes. Okay, so these are things like earthquakes or flood. Think Hurricane Katrina or 9/11. Anything that's large scale, relatively unpredictable, and life-threatening. Okay. What's worse about catastrophes is the immediate impact is a massive increase in stress, but also they tend to have an effect that the stress remains. So think Hurricane Katrina, when it hits, is a massive event, but then you have years of cleanup and trying to get your life back if you were in that area. Okay. So I, of course, have the little question for you. Where do you think the COVID-19 quarantine fits? Any guesses? Yeah, it's an interesting one because you're living through what could technically be called a catastrophe, and we don't really know how long it will last. What's interesting about this particular catastrophe, because you are in quarantine, it has an interesting effect of actually probably increasing your daily stress if there are things you have to deal with on a daily basis that normally you wouldn't have to because you would leave your house and go somewhere else. So it remains to be seen where this goes. Okay. All right. So let's talk about how we deal with that stress. How can we make it less effective on ourselves? So stress really can be have greater effect based on how you look at it. So it's about perceived control. Really about, are you optimistic or pessimistic? Okay. So when you're optimistic, many studies have shown you are more likely to maintain health and even boost your immune system. So when you get a little cold and you say, "Oh man, it's allergies. Gonna have to take a little NyQuil tonight and get up and running the next day." That person is much more likely to deal with the illness faster and not get as sick versus someone else who goes, "Oh, I definitely have corona." And when you think that everything is going to make you very sick very fast, you have that pessimistic outlook, you are more likely to get sick. Because, not necessarily that you have a worse virus or even worse allergies, it's because when you have that pessimistic outlook, that negative outlook, you tend to release stress hormones. And when the stress hormones are running through your body, it's interesting, your body will act against the stress hormones to try and remove the stress. Because you are trying to remove the stress, you're actually weakening your immune system that would instead be fighting the virus or the allergies. Okay. So optimistic, I'll feel better tomorrow. You're not releasing that stress hormone, so your body's not dealing with two things it has to fight. Pessimistic, oh my God, I have the plague. You have to fight your stress hormones as well as whatever the virus is. The reason why people can develop a negative outlook, besides, them being raised that way or having that personality, a lot of it has to do with your perceived level of control. People who feel that what is happening to them is completely out of their control tend to be more pessimistic. Okay. Versus people who are more optimistic, even if it's something they can't control, they might try and control parts of the situation to fix it. So even if you have no control over why it happened to you, if you're the type who can say, all right, well, what can we do to make it better? You are more likely to get better. It's just like Dory. I put the note in there. If you just keep swimming, it'll be fine. It's not fine. All right, last one is stress and disease. So let's talk about the two big diseases that people always say it was because of stress. The first one is cancer. Okay, there has been some research. People really, really want to link stress and cancer. Most of the research is inconclusive. The only definitive conclusions we have come to are, number one, stress does not create cancer cells. However, as mentioned before, stress does weaken the immune system because you're busy fighting the stress hormones instead of the disease. So in this case, if you're very stressed and you develop cancer cells like a tumor separately, your body will be less able to fight those cancer cells, to fight the tumor, than if you were not stressed. So not a causation, but definitely a correlation. Okay. A different disease that definitely is connected with stress is heart disease. A lot of the studies with heart disease had to do with people's personalities. And that's where you get the terms type A personality and type B personality. Don't know if you've ever heard of those before. If you're a type A, you're very competitive, impatient, aggressive, anger prone. Type A doesn't mean you have to be like the Hulk. Type A means you are consistently pushing, so more Tony Stark. Whereas type B is very easygoing, relaxed, everything will be fine, just keep swimming. So type B doesn't mean you have to just let everything roll by, but you're more willing to, as they say, roll with the punches. You are more able to deal with stress because you don't let it get to you. You just keep going. The research that has been done has shown that type A personalities are statistically more likely to suffer from heart attacks. They're more likely to suffer earlier in life, and they're more likely to suffer more frequently. So return of heart attacks. So You can decide if you're a type A person or a type B person. And of course, there are other types. You can go with C, where sometimes you're really competitive, but then you're okay with it. That's probably the best way to be. But you know yourself, if you let all the little things get to you, you're just letting the stress build up. So overall, when it comes to stress, we do know it affects your immune system. We know it has physical deteriorating effects when allowed to continue. So today's activity is going to help you identify your stressors and hopefully give you more of an optimistic outlook. So it's a very simple activity. You're going to list one of your stressors that you have, and then I don't even want to know how you approach it now. I want you to give me an optimistic approach to the challenge. I don't even call it a stressor. I call it a challenge to get you in that mindset. So maybe you're already there and you're good, or maybe it's been really wrecking you, and this might help. So I gave you an example. So my 3-year-old daughter keeps waking up in the middle of the night. So I've taken the optimistic approach to this challenge, and I've listed several different things I think when I get up in the middle of the night. So at least it's during quarantine. I don't have to get up early. If I need to get up at 3, that's okay, because I can sleep until 7. Which makes me sad that I think 7 is late now. Other things I could think, it's extra time for snuggles. Soon she won't need me to help cover her, so I should enjoy this time while it lasts. And then sometimes I don't really care whether or not it's going very quickly in terms of them growing up. In that case, I'm thinking like, you know what, this too shall pass, and it'll be fine, and I'll get over it. And she'll be sleeping through the night soon enough. So those are all different thoughts I could have that are all optimistic versus the pessimistic outlook towards the challenge of, oh my God, she's up again. I can't take this anymore. Why is this happening every night? It's not happening every night. And you'll see that that's a very different approach to dealing with the stress, because one just continues the stress and the other helps you release the stress. So I've given you 5 spaces. Come up with 5 different stressors in optimistic ways. I also put a note, if you want to list more of your stressors, you feel free to list those there. Because that list will help you determine how you can deal with those items in a more optimistic fashion. So that's your activity for today. Make sure you hand it in by next class for a grade. If you have any questions, you can email or put them on the class questions document. See you later.